As a Marine, I've been trained to stay calm under pressure, but when I saw what one of my passengers was holding behind my seat, that training kicked in fast. I used to drive for Uber and Lyft in mostly rural areas, but there was a decent-sized city nearby where things were a bit more active. Most of my passengers were chill, easygoing people. The locals, on the other hand, weren't really used to rideshare. They saw it as some trendy city thing, and they were excited it finally reached them. One night, I got a ride request from the bar strip downtown. I pulled up and picked up two guys who had clearly been drinking. One looked to be in his late 50s, the other in his late 30s or early 40s. The older guy was noticeably more out of it, while the younger one was more in control. Right away, I could tell they were a bit different. Not your typical rowdy passengers. They had this serious, street smart vibe. Not mobsters or anything like that, but definitely the kind of people who knew how to move quietly through the streets. I wasn't nervous though. I actually grew up around people like that. My family was involved in all kinds of things growing up, so I knew the types. They asked me to take them to Jack in the Box, and I explained that I usually don't go outside of the app because it rarely ends well. People say they'll tip, then they don't, but the younger guy tossed a 20 over my shoulder and I joked about it, so I said, "Alright, now you're speaking my language," and off we went. Back when I was in the Marine Corps, we learned how to talk to people and get them to open up to us without realizing it. It became something I used as a driver, just a good way to make conversation and keep the ride friendly. But these guys, they were a brick wall. Even with the little alcohol in them, I couldn't get anything out of them. Later in the ride, when they found out I'd served in the military, they asked if I was interested in buying equipment. I laughed and made a joke about stopping by their store one day. They laughed too. We all know it wasn't a real store. It was lighthearted and the mood stayed cool. But as we were getting closer to their drop-off point, the younger guy realized the address was wrong and started correcting it on his phone. I slowed down to make a U-turn. As I checked my rearview mirror, I noticed the older guy holding something behind the seat. Something I didn't like the look of. I stayed calm and asked the younger guy, "Hey, does your friend have an issue or something?" He looked up from his phone, saw what was going on, and immediately reached over, took the item away, and gave his buddy a serious scolding. The mood shifted, but I didn't panic. I've been in tense situations before, and staying calm is something I've always been good at. We kept going. They were bickering in the back seat as I drove to the corrected address. Eventually, we made it to the right drop-off location, and they got out. That item the older man had appeared to be a firearm. I'm not too sure what his intentions were, but I'm assuming not good. This happened a couple of months ago. I was hanging out at a friend's house one night and didn't realize how late it was. It was around 2 a.m. I really like sleeping in my own bed, so instead of staying over, I decided to call an Uber to take me home. My friend lives in a more quiet part of town, so it took a while for the driver to show up. The ride back to my house was about 40 minutes. As soon as I got into the car, the first thing the driver said was how pretty I looked. Right away, I felt very uncomfortable. I already get nervous taking Ubers alone, especially late at night, so that just added to the feeling. I just said thank you, trying to keep it polite, and he started driving. My friend is a guy, and I think the driver may have seen him standing at the doorway as I left. About 5 minutes into the ride, he asked, "Was that your boyfriend?" Something about the way he asked gave me a weird feeling. I replied yes, and didn't say anything else. Then he started talking about how lucky my boyfriend was, and repeated how pretty I was. At that point, I just stayed quiet. About 10 minutes into the ride, the driver said he knew a quicker way to get to my house and that we were going to take a detour. I got very nervous. I tried calling my dad, but since it was 3 a.m., he didn't answer. So I decided to call 911. When the operator picked up, I acted like I was talking to my dad. She picked up right away on what was happening and played along, asking me simple yes or no questions, like what color the car was, what kind it was, and where I was. She asked if I was in danger. I told her, I don't know. After figuring out where I was, she told me to ask the driver to get on the highway instead of staying on those rural roads. Luckily, we were only about 5 minutes from the highway. She also gave me an address to a house near the police station and told me to ask the driver to drop me off there. She said an officer would be waiting nearby to take me home safely. I politely asked the driver to change the drop-off address, and after asking a couple of times, he agreed and headed that way. I stayed on the phone with the operator the entire time. When we got to the spot, sure enough, there was a police car just a few houses away. I got out and went straight to it. Looking back, I'm not sure if I overreacted or not. Maybe it was just my anxiety, but something about the whole situation didn't feel right. I'm really glad I trusted my gut. I was a bit late when it came to getting my driver's license, but since I lived in the city, it didn't really matter. Walking, buses, and rideshare apps made it easy to get around, so I didn't feel like I was missing out. I used Uber often, especially to get to and from work, and over time, I got to know a lot of the local drivers. I've had a few uncomfortable rides here and there, but nothing serious. Only one, which still gives me the chills. I was about 23 at the time, working an office job downtown. I called an Uber to head home after work. I didn't recognize the driver when he pulled up, and everything seemed normal at first. I got in, we said hello, he confirmed where I was going, and we started driving. The driver looked like he was in his mid-30s. He was a bit heavier, very smiley, and kept looking at me through the rearview mirror. A lot more than normal. Right away, he said something like, "I've picked you up before." Since I took Ubers all the time, that didn't seem strange, until he started saying things that made me feel uneasy. He asked me why I didn't work at my old job anymore. I hadn't worked there since I was 19, about 3 or 4 years earlier, and I was shocked he remembered that. Then he started naming my hometown, the high school I went to, my college, what I was studying, and even how many siblings I had. At first, it could have seemed like he had a great memory, or was trying to be friendly, but I wasn't the writer to talk a lot. I usually kept my answers vague. If someone asked where I was from, I'd say something like, "Oh, about 40 minutes south." I never gave out personal info. So for him to know all of that about me, it felt really weird. He kept going, asking personal questions like if I had a boyfriend, when I graduated, and where I liked to hang out. At one point, he even brought up my male roommate and asked questions about him that felt very inappropriate. I was clearly uncomfortable, but he just kept going. I started giving short answers, or pretending not to hear the questions, hoping he'd finally get the hint, but he didn't. He kept asking, and even though the ride was about 10 minutes, It felt forever. The entire time, he kept looking at me in the mirror and asking me about my personal life, and it was clear that I didn't want to talk. Near the end of the ride, he started giving me compliments, saying my name was pretty, calling me beautiful and smart, and telling me I was his favorite rider. As we pulled up to my apartment, he asked what door was mine. That was the last straw. I pointed to my landlord's door instead, but he still pulled up to mine. Before unlocking the door, he turned around, smiled, and said, "This is the longest ride we've had together." Then he told me to have a good night and said he'd hope to see me again. I got out of the car right away and walked around the side of the building to make sure he was gone before heading inside. I reported the ride right away. I didn't take Uber again for a few weeks after that. I took the bus. I never saw him again, and I never had another experience like that. But to this day, I still get creeped out thinking about how much he knew about me. I'm really glad I moved since then.